What up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We got Pittsburgh with us and our special guest, the comeback card investor.
What's up, guys? Happy to be on.
Appreciate each and every one of you guys coming in the chat, hanging with us, and especially our special guest, Brad, the comeback card investor. So we're going to go through the chat. We're going to say hello to a few people. We got Hip Flipping Mama in the house. Appreciate you being here. We got Moko in the house. What is up? We got Paul Gate City Picker. He's with us on Sundays for our auctions at 4 p.m. Eastern. Appreciate you being here. Thrift Bees, all the way up from Canada. Appreciate you being here. Art Vandalay, what is going on? Appreciate you being here.
You guys have a lot of different people that are on my station, and so it's really cool to see all the different types of flippers and collectors and investors that are just here on YouTube, because there's a lot more than I think what any of us expect.
Definitely. Oh, yeah. I think the cool thing about the way this last plot of time has been, as far as a lot of people getting back into the hobby, it's just like so many different people from so many different walks of life are just now all coming back into it and just all meeting in one place. Just kind of cool.
Yeah, well, it's funny is that the show I went to today, there was 2 shows, but the second one I went to, a guy was standing about 20 yards away from me, looking at me as I was talking to someone else. And then we ended up chatting, and he said, I just got in 3 weeks ago and was noticing you and a couple others on YouTube. And I'm like, that was his first show since he was a kid. 3 weeks ago, he wasn't even knowing about cards and how they've exploded. And I'm like, wow, that's happening really quick. So it's always cool to see that.
That's awesome.
What up, Tim? Over the years in the house, appreciate you being here. So for anyone who doesn't know who you are, Brad, would you like to do a quick intro of who you are?
Sure, man. So let's see. The YouTube station is the Comeback Card Investor, and basically my background is in personal finance, personal growth, and I was modeling and hosting for years. But when you do work like that, you pretty much get paid good 1 month and then horrible the next couple months, which helped me get better at personal finance. I ended up becoming a financial coach through Dave Ramsey's program, if you're familiar with the name Dave Ramsey. So he's very much of a practical, zero debt, just grind, have tunnel vision, pay off your bills, invest safe and sound. So I was doing that with a lot of other models and actors here in Los Angeles and back in Miami. And then COVID hit, right? Actually, right before COVID, I remember hearing Gary Vee talk about sports cards. And I just thought to myself, how cool would it be to get back into sports cards? Because I'm 34 years old and I'm just I'm like looking to connect to my inner child. The whole time I'm like, I miss bumper cars. I miss laughing. I miss playing. You know, how old are you guys, by the way?
36.
36.
Okay. So you guys know the feeling of being so disconnected from your youth, because when you're in your teens, you remember it. When you're in your 20s, you're still having fun. But there's a time when you're in your 30s and it's like, man, I just am not having fun the way I used to. So I was already looking for ways to rekindle that childlike spirit. And once I heard Gary Vee say it a couple times, I decided just to look in a bit further. And when I went to a card shop here in LA, it was called the Bullpen. I went in there and I just said, hey, I haven't been in a card shop since I was a kid. And I remember collecting all these 90s cards, Jordan and Kobe and Tracy McGrady and whatever. What has changed? And he basically said, well, the boxes are now $500, $1,000. And a lot of the cards are now $5,000, $10,000. And this was February. So this was a year ago, before the boom. And I remember thinking to myself, this is amazing, because what if I can make a couple $100 in sports cards while also tapping into my inner child, versus, okay, I don't have time to do this because I need to grind in something that's more serious and more adult-like. And so, I opened a box with a buddy of mine. It was a 2019 Donruss box, just Donruss. And there were those Marvel inserts in there. And what's funny is that box was only $200 at the time, which I thought was a fortune. And then I think that box went up to probably $500 or $800 or something ridiculous. But I had so much fun ripping it that I said, all right, let me learn more. Let me learn more. So I went on YouTube. I saw videos of PSA collector and sports card investor. And I was like, oh, my God, there's so much more that I thought. There's people ripping online. There's people making money, and there's ways of strategizing how to actually flip cards, get them graded. And I have a bit of a background in real estate as well, where I was tying this into flipping houses, where you buy a car or you buy a house that's in bad shape, you put in money, you put in a new roof and carpets and all this, and now you can flip it and actually make a profit. And I saw the same type of thing with cards, where you can buy raw cards and do it. So I just became fascinated. Then once COVID hit and I'm stuck in my apartment and everything that was a bit of fun was now stripped away, I just decided, let me go all in. And so I had a coach working with me who was helping me with my personal finance business. And I said, I'm just not having fun with this. And he basically said, Brad, why don't you just get 30 days into cards? Just YouTube, because you like YouTube, and just investing and learning. And I did that for 30 days and I haven't looked back, because now I could use all the financial principles that I've learned along the way that I wanted to teach others into sports cards. So now sports cards are the Trojan horse to learning about financial principles that hopefully most people want to learn about, that will help them. So that was basically it over the last 10, 11 months, but it's been such a blast.
That's awesome, man.
Your story is very similar to kind of like ours for the most part. Like, we were in something totally different, but it was sort of similar. Like, we were selling on eBay and Amazon, and Pittsburgh was starting. He was always kind of collecting here and there, but we would never really talk about it. But he was always collecting and stuff like that. And then he started ripping cards, and I'm like, wow, they really changed the cards. And then I seen like patches and autos in the packs, and I'm like, this is really, really awesome. You know what I mean? And next I'm buying in breaks. I'm trying to find product, and here we are now. Like we went full in on it, because of COVID, like you and everything else. And now we're so deep into the market, and we're enjoying it. You know what I mean? Like, we're able to have our inner child come out, enjoy sports, and not only that, like, we have pieces that can go up in value. They might go down in value, but they could be worth $10,000 one day, $20,000 next day, or we can open up a pack and get a Zion auto or something like that, and it's almost like buying scratch offs. So it matched like everything that I enjoy. I love gambling. I love investing. I love like reselling and things like that. So it just really matched up with me pretty perfect.
Definitely.
I was going to say, it's funny to hear that, because I realized that just the transaction of cards, even if it's not a PC card, but just the idea of buying a card and selling it and looking at it as you buy it, looking at it as you ship it off, it's just so much fun. And when you mentioned your inner child, I think of it like my adult self hugging my 12-year-old self. Like, they're coming together, where all the seriousness of money and being able to turn this into a profit that pays bills and does other things meets all the things that I wanted as a kid, which is just, I want to have fun. I want to look at some cool cards of the players that I admire, that I love, and just look at it. And I'm like, how many salesmen or merchants or whoever out there can be so excited about a product as people that are in this hobby?
Exactly. Like with COVID and everything, the Amazon side of things was really starting to grind on me, because it was so demanding. There were so many opportunities, and jumping into the card market was a way of like almost like finally letting me enjoy something a little more than making it feel like, I mean, I enjoyed it, but it was starting to grind on me to almost like it was like a job. You know what I mean? And with cards, like doing, watching games and different things like that, you're able to do analysis of players and possible prospects and things like that. So it gives me an extra excuse to watch a game and the wife not to get upset with me when I make a bigger purchase, especially on some of these Luka cards that I bought early on and profited pretty well on.
Well, I mean, you mentioned it too. When you can watch sports and it be productive, that's game over. When I watch a game, I'm working, right? Because I need to see who's playing good, who gets benched. What does this mean for other teams in that division or in the league? The idea of turning watching sports into something productive is a dream come true. It's like, that's winning in life. So I'm totally with you there.
Definitely. And Jacob has a good point here. It's way more fun than measuring clothes for eBay. That's for sure.
Absolutely. That's been the best part about it, is like actually enjoying the stuff I deal with now. And I shared this on my channel before, but like the hobbies actually like help save my business, because like what I, started my channel about was like, doing storage units, thrift stores, garage sales, and like getting stuff and selling it on eBay. And like, that's what I do for a living full time. So when COVID hit and like none of that stuff was possible anymore, like I turned to like, okay, well, I have all of these card collections I bought out. So I just started going through cards. I started going to the stores and buying packs, opening them up, grading them. And, it was just like, boom, it was like a snowball effect, like Nate was saying earlier, just like so awesome, like what, cards is able to provide people.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if you know this, I was on Cincinnati Picker's station. I don't know if you know Cincinnati Picker, but John... Yep. And he's similar, where he does that full time, but he just comes across cards all the time. And when you have something where you could have a diamond in the rough that's worth $3,000 or more, then you want to learn more about it. But it's like, I remember my mom doing this Amazon fulfillment business years ago, where her and her friends would go to stores like Ross or Tuesday Morning or whatever and buy these toys or lotions or whatever with this app. And I'm sure you guys know about this, especially in Picksburgh. And the app shows you this is how much it's going for on Amazon and whatever. And I remember getting into it because I thought it was a very creative way of making money on the side. But I just was not interested in going to these stores and looking up lotions and toys and products I didn't care about. The idea of scavenging and finding a deal and knowing that this book or this record or whatever it is will sell for 3 times more on Amazon, and I just could ship in bulk to Amazon and they fulfill it, I thought was fascinating. But now I kind of do that with CompC, where I find cards on other platforms and I know I could send them off to CompC and CompC will sell it individually. But now I'm looking at cards and I'm more enthusiastic about that item versus just a random little Barbie doll.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely been one of the things that I've even told Nate. Like I've even like coming out of like, I mean, we're still dealing with a global pandemic, but coming out of like shutdowns and stuff, it's almost now to the point where like my business model is almost shifting to like high-end graded cards more so than a little bit of everything, which is just like awesome for me, because like that's what I really am passionate about and enjoy doing most of my time is, buying and selling cards.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is that look, as a collector, I totally feel you if you are bitter about all this, right? If you just want to complete your collections, you're kind of at you're kind of getting screwed right now, so to speak. But the good thing is that you do have a lot of cards worth a lot of money you could sell off, and this won't last forever. There is a novelty phase. There is something where it'll cool off at some point and it'll just be a higher floor than it was a year ago. But the idea that, like Sasha, I'm sure you guys know Sasha T, he flew to, I want to say it was Portland or Seattle, one of the two, I forgot, maybe Seattle, to buy this $40,000+ Kevin Durant rookie card. The idea of flying to another city to buy a card means that there's so much money now in cards that you make $10,000 on that deal, and it's well worth the flight. And now you could pay your bills for a couple months because of that. So the idea of an extra zero being attached excites me, just because I'd love to do this more and more, be able to pay bills, be able to scale, do things like that. But I definitely feel, I feel for the collectors out there that just want to have the cards for themselves and they are not being able to find the product in stores or buy the cards that they used to. But just like anything, just like you with your flipping business, you pivot, right? You have an opportunity to now do something else. Now you have a whole room full of cards worth $3 million versus 100,000. Well, that's an opportunity right there. You can't have it exactly the way it was before, but at one door closes, another door opens. And so, I mean, if I was a collector, I would be sitting on a lot of money that I could either move now, or I could just wait until everything subsides in the next couple of years. And whenever the next low is, if it's 5 years from now, then you could just scoop it up then.
Yeah. As far as collecting goes, do you have a specific PC? Like, I know obviously you're a Tampa fan and you like the Florida teams, but do you collect anything for yourself personally?
If it's cards I really like, I'll buy some for myself. But here's the thing. as I pursue this full time, my budget for PC is extremely low, because I know that if I buy the $1,000 card I want for myself now, that's $1,000 less to invest and grow. And if I can grow that, then I could buy the $5,000 card in a year or two's time. So pretty much all my money is being reinvested into the station or into other cards, because I know that that will be what balloons. So I could buy all the Kobe autos in a couple years, even if those prices go up. But it's the same as like, if I bought a nice car now, I know I'd be slowing down my progress to be able to scale up and grow the station and grow the community and everything the way I want. So some of my PC cards are like, I mean, I bought a Michael Jordan $4 skybox today. I'll bring it over. This is embarrassing. However, this card emotionally means a lot to me, and the glare is horrible, just because I actually remember having this card as a kid, and I like Jordan on the back playing golf. So my PC right now is, I have like Will Smith cards. I have an Anthony Bourdain rookie card. I liked Anthony Bourdain when he was the host of No Reservations, and then very tragic death. But that's all of it. It's like the low end stuff. The Shaq autograph right here. That's the biggest splurge I've had in a while. Where that's about $300 for a giant canvas of his Upper Deck rookie card. But I have to make sure that I stay disciplined so I can have those bigger cards down the road.
Yeah, that's really smart.
That's a great point, because, as someone who likes certain players or certain teams, you can pay over what a card, could be a month from now, 2 months from now, and then get yourself in some financial trouble, depending on your situation, with the market and everything else going on. What is a little bit of your strategy with how things are kind of forming with PSA and everything going right now, with the prices going up and everything?
Well, fortunately, I have about 700 cards at PSA that I bought at the beginning phase. And look, I started small because this was all new to me since I was a kid. So everything was like, all right, I know Upper Deck and Topps, and then that gets thrown out the window. Now it's Panini. Now it's all this. And so I was learning from the get-go. But getting back into cards, I still had that mentality of a $5 card is normal. A $30 card is a lot. Like a $1,000 card must be the most valuable card ever, because that's how I thought of it when I was 13 years old.
Yeah.
So I was buying up a lot of the cheap stuff Kobe Bryant Finest cards for $4, Kobe Bryant Chrome for $5, and thinking, okay, as long as I buy it at this price, there's not much room for it to go down. So I was buying all those, sending to PSA the ones that looked perfect. I got back a submission back in October, which I don't know if you guys saw that video. It's like my most controversial video, because I meant to do the longer service, and I got it back very quickly, but it cost me an extra $3,000. So I was freaking out. But I was able to liquidate all that, made a really good profit there, fortunately. And now I'm like, look, I sent out all these Tom Brady Chromes. I sent out all this other stuff I got, but I'm getting more and more interested in graded only, just because the amount of work and hassle and disappointment perhaps with raw cards, it's not that much fun for me, right? It's cool to get that Gem Mint 10 back, knowing that $5 card is now $50, or that $20 card is now $100. However, I'd rather deal with graded stuff. And because PSA has the backlog, and in a year's time, a lot of that will be back, I think it's going to be mostly graded anyway, right? Because the junk wax stuff is getting graded. Once all that's through their system, then it's just going to be the modern stuff that's getting sent. Right now, it's just that huge backlog. So my strategy now is, I love online platforms like CompC and StarStock, because if I can turn $2 into $4 or $5 into $8 with a couple clicks of a mouse and waiting 3 weeks or a month or 3 months in between, I think that's super cool. I could do that anywhere in the world. I could do it outside. And then for the bigger stuff, I like to look at the big picture first. What is going on in society? What is going on in culture? Do people have money now, or do they not have money? So when the stimulus checks come out, when people have their tax returns, I know that there could be a bidding war for a lot of cards. I'd rather sell during that time when people have used their stimulus checks and when there is no tax return. Then I would be buying, knowing that there's not going to be too many bids on the same card. I also like to factor that in with the seasons. So football season ends, I want to start looking. Right now, football has been through the roof, even with the season being over, partly due to the quarterback situation. It's all over the place. But once seasons end, I want to start looking, see what drops. And then when seasons are starting to build up a lot of hype, like preseason, I want to look to sell. And whatever else I have, it could go mid-season, it could go during that player peaking, or it could not. But I love to reduce my risk by getting out at the profit I'm happy with before they can tear an ACL or underperform, or they do fine, but the rest of their team sucks. So, the strategy is changing all the time because the hobby's changing all the time. But that's pretty much where I'm at right now.
Definitely.
Are there some guys that you kind of will hold, even though like you could theoretically use that? Like, for example, like, are there like Luka type players that you'll hold, or will you continue to turn and burn with like those type of players as well?
I think it always comes down to the opportunity cost, right? If I feel confident about if I could turn a card over for a 50% return, which is actually really good, but in this market where money's flying in, 50% return is like, oh, that's it. But really, that's a great return. But if I could sell it at 50% and then know where I would put that money next, I would rather take the 50% and do that. However, if there's a time where I'm like, look, everything I really am interested in is really high, I have belief that player will continue to go up or that card will continue to go up, I would rather hold. But it really comes down to, if I sell now, what am I doing with that money? Is this going towards something else that is low? Because I'm all about, hey, sell for 50% return, put it into something else as long as I believe in it just as much, if not more. If that's not out there, then I might as well hold if I really believe that card or that player is going to continue to go up.
So Tim from Over the Years has a question. He says, I know you mostly buy singles, but do you ever have the itch to jump into breaks for fun or the rush or the chase?
I have the itch, yeah, but I don't allow. Here's the thing. I think as fun as it would be, I could get disappointed very easily, because I think for me the strategy is so much fun that I'd rather invest in my strategy than the break, just because I feel more confident in that. I think that's more satisfying, right? I think it's satisfying to have a strategy and that player or that card actually turn out, versus a break, because then it's just luck or unlucky, right? The guy next to you got that pack or got that card and you didn't, and he made $1,000 and you lost $100. And I don't know, I've never even put a quarter in a slot machine before, so I'm not a gambler by any stretch. So to me, it's more about the mental game of what will I be right about and what will I be wrong about, and that's the gamble I prefer more.
Yeah. Well, even if you play it by percentages, you figure most of the time with breaks, you're more than likely not going to make your money back, unless it's like, obviously, like the sports card market exploded and all cards are going through the roof. Then, you most likely will. But, if like last year, if you were trying to get the New Orleans Pelicans, you were spending like $150, $200 just to get that team. Yeah. And then there's no guarantee, they're not pulling out Nicolo Mellis and, Nickeil Alexander Walkers and Jackson Hayeses instead of Zion, So, that's what happened to me. Like I bought into this really expensive, it was a hobby box of Prism and like had some other sets thrown in with it. And like, it was a random team thing, and like I hit my lucky stars, finally get the Pelicans in like a thing, and literally every single card that came out was either Melly, Jackson Hayes, or Walker. The big thing I got out of it was a Jackson Hayes autograph, but it was like literally not one Zion Williamson came out of there. I was like so salty. I was but luckily it was at random, and I didn't have to pay up to get the Pelicans.
Right? Yeah.
Thing that's crazy is, like he was saying, like sometimes the the cost of getting into the breaks and getting the Pelicans, if say you were for sure going to get them versus a random team, they were more than what one card of Zion was getting. So you would literally have to hit multiple Zions or get one of the, basically the chase cards that everyone was hoping to find with like an auto or a rookie patch or something like that, where, okay, you definitely made your money. So that was the one thing I couldn't believe. I'm like, wow, people are paying $230 for the Pelicans, $300 for the Pelicans, depending on what set, and not even maybe have a chance to get one, or maybe they get three. You know what I mean? It's for me, early on, it was more of just getting my feet wet, maybe buying in a few breaks here and there. But as I was seeing how these outcomes were going, of how much money I was putting in versus, what I could have just bought the card individually for, I started becoming just the eBay sniper, basically in the middle of the night, just hoping for someone to put up an auction at 2:00 in the morning and no one would see it. And here I am buying cards. Like, I've gotten so many awesome deals just off eBay buying cards. I have a Kyrie 2012 Prism that I got for $100 back about it was a PSA 9 for I think it was like 6 months ago. And now look at his prices are almost towards the $500-$600 mark, and I'm kind of like what you're talking about with your 2x kind of plan. Here I am at least 4x, maybe even 5, and I'm still kind of holding on to some of the cards. Watching kind of you and a couple other people kind of do things a little bit differently has changed my thought process. I almost had like the collector mentality, like I'm just going to buy Luka and hold him for 20 years, and once he hits say 100,000 or whatever he could hit like 20 years from now, then I've made it. But I'm seeing all these people making all these deals, making all this quick money. I'm like, man, I definitely did it wrong, and it's awesome to see people, do different things and, have success, and you're able to kind of do things your own way, but, do something a little bit different to have maybe a little bit better for success.
I'll also mention my initial strategy was Tom Brady, Kobe Bryant, hold for the long run. If I was buying Tracy McGrady PSA 9s for like $8, right? I mean, less than it costs to grade. I'm like, I like Tracy McGrady. I like Tim Duncan, finest rookie cards. I mean, so cheap, but it was, okay, hold it for the long run. 4 years down the road, 5 years down the road, sell it. And it'll just be nice display pieces up until then. But then it's not only being able to make more money quicker, but it is fun. Every transaction to me is fun. Every time I hear that cha-ching sound on eBay and I look and I'm like, oh, it's sold, and I get to ship it out. I'm like, ooh, now I have money to put into something else, and now the game starts over, right? Now it's like, here we go. Now I got an extra $200. Where's it going to go? Let me do the research. Let me match up what's going on in sports and in pop culture and whatever else. What's low, what's high, what do I think is coming up next? And to me, that's a lot of the fun, is now having the money to put it into a card and see where it goes. So it's funny because it just started the same way, but the hobby has gone from, I mean, I'd love to see like a visual of where the hobby was 2 years ago versus now, because even in the year, it's been just over a year since I've been back in. It's night and day difference from February 2020 to February or March 2021. But it's such a fluid market too, where once I have a card, it's like 6 months is the latest I plan on keeping it, just because I know, I have 3 different reasons why I'd want to sell it before then. But I will say one thing. There are players I like more, guys like Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, guys that have the legacy, like at least somewhat of a legacy built in, like Anthony Davis or something, so that if it doesn't pan out this season or the way I want, it's good to know that next season and the season after, there's a good chance. There's something there versus just this guy could be the best ever, but he's only played 6 games. Or this guy, he was drafted very high. He should be a star, but he's only scored 20 points for 4 games, and now he's sitting out with an injury. So that's where I like to play, is a lot of that. What's the highest reward, but also the lowest risk?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Out of curiosity, with your background in personal finance, do you think it's realistic? Like, obviously, the market changes, with every game and everything like that. But do you think it's realistic for somebody to build up like enough like of a retirement egg just through sports cards and other like collectibles and stuff like that?
I mean, I think it's possible, sure. Just because if it's an asset, if it's worth money, then it is. But I don't know where a lot of these cards will be in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. If you're 40 years old and you're going to retire in 25 years, and you're holding on to Jordan autos, rare Jordan autos and Kobe's, yeah, I think that's fine, because I don't think Jordan's legacy or LeBron or Kobe's or those guys is going to diminish. So I think that's fine. I wouldn't just do that. I mean, like, I have my money in the stock market and other funds. I want to put into real estate. I mean, because I don't know what's going to happen. I know it's fun, and I know that whatever happens in the next couple of years, there's so much interest in sports cards for legit reasons, because it is nostalgic, because it is fun, because it's a way of gambling, because there's like 10 different factors or ways to enjoy this. But I don't know where it will be as a whole in 5 years, 10 years. But, the markets, real estate, all that stuff has been around for hundreds of years. So that's where I see it. It's going to be a part of it. It's going to be my way to make income on a month-to-month basis as I build the station, and I know that that's another revenue stream right there. But if you want to retire off of it, hey, learn about it, put some money in, but not as a replacement for index funds and real estate and some of the other stuff that's very secure. I would say maybe 5 to 10% is a good number to play with, but don't be like, hey, I'm going to take all my money out of the mutual funds and throw it into sports cards, because that's extremely high risk.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, we look at what's happening with modern right now. We're seeing record low prices even before the pandemic. It's relative to what those prices were back then for the most part. I would say non-Luka, non the top, say, 5 guys for the most part. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of opportunities that could be had moving forward because these prices are so low. Do you think the modern market will kind of bounce back, especially once we get closer to like the playoffs and things of that nature?
Well, I've already seen a lot of the vintage cards drop. So I use market movers because I like to sort by what is gone up the most and down the most, just to get that overall sense of trends. So if I go under what has dropped the most over the last 30 days, it's second-year Jordans, the Jordan sticker, Hakeem sticker, all those stickers that I think Vegas Dave said are worthless. They've all plummeted. The second-year Jordans, all that's starting to go down. So I'm already seeing the leveling off and dropping of vintage, and that means that, all right, well, we have stimulus checks, we have tax returns coming. That's going to go somewhere. And then, of course, well, we got baseball heating up. We have in May is going to be basketball playoffs, hockey playoffs in the middle of the season, or at least 2 months in of baseball, or a month and a half in.
Right.
Modern's not going to go anywhere, just because part of what we love about the hobby is that we're watching active sports. It's like, we're not going to stop watching sports. We love sports cards because it makes sports better. Exactly. I got to give Jeremy from Sports Cards Live credit for that, but it makes sports better. So yeah, it's going to go up, period. And then that's when I'm going to be looking at vintage. I'm already starting to look into vintage on some of those cards that have really started to plateau and really drop. So I think it's just a pendulum. It's a pendulum, modern, vintage, one way or the other. Something like that is always going. And when it gets too far on one side, it just swings to the other. And, just make sure you're on the right side of the pendulum.
That's what's so awesome about this market. Even though, like, 1 second it might be down, or the other side might be up, like with vintage and modern, the opposite effect will be the next trending thing to pick up. So like whenever like the NBA season's an off season, it's always a great time to buy, because everyone's not thinking about basketball. Everyone's not there's no games on. The fun or the of the market isn't there because they're not playing. And now there's all this question maybe of a player going to a different team, or the situation and players. So, there's a little bit of risk involved, of course, too. But that's the one thing I love about it, man. There's always something moving up, down, spinning around. And it's my job to figure out when is the best time to pull the trigger on vintage, modern, or maybe even another sport. You know, like I've seen wrestling cards starting to getting a lot of push lately. I would set a 1991 WCW that I'm just waiting for it to maybe eventually go up in value, but hasn't went up a cent.
Did you ever see the Avengers where dude's so proud of his vintage like Captain America cards? I feel like that's Nate with his 1991 WCW.
Wait, the guy from Shield?
Yeah, Phil
Yeah,
Cole.
in the movie. Okay.
Oh, look, he got the card right there.
You know what? If you learn one thing, it's that if you think it's undervalued and attention hasn't gone there, it's just going to be a matter of time. Because I remember that, you know, that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson card, the one that went for thousands of dollars. It's a University of Miami PSA 9 and PSA 10. I looked at that card on eBay back in March of last year, March or April, and I would not buy it for $800. It was like $700 or $800, and I thought that was way too high. And it's because there were no prior sales at that number. Everything was lower. And now it's like a $30,000 or $40,000 card. But the reason has been because I looked at Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I said, what celebrities, what people in real life would I want to collect outside of just athletes? And I looked up The Rock, and that's when I found that card. And so there are other Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson wrestling cards out there. Nothing as rare that I've seen. It's more just like 1998, The Rock, whatever. But if that's going to be popular, then why not a John Cena rookie card? Even if it's not nearly to that level. I'm like, well, what about a WCW? What about Ric Flair? What about like all those guys that I remember, Diamond Dallas Page and whoever else? So to me, it's always about in this market where so much money and attention is flocking to it. If you have an inkling for it and it's cheap, you're probably going to be right at some point, because I was thinking the same way with cards that I just passed over, and I should have not second guessed myself, because if I thought that it was cool to look at and I would want to have it for myself, there's probably 1,000 other people minimum that feel the same way.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Like basically, if you can find a good deal on something and just buy it and just sit on it, you know, like you said, eventually the market or somebody's going to be like, hey, I want this set, or I want this card, or I want, you know, because they had it as a kid, or, you know, like Grimes was saying about the, you know, like the 80 and 90s pop culture cards.
Oh, yeah. I love that stuff.
Those are catching fire right now as we speak. With
They just got a sealed box of Yo MTV wraps. That's awesome.
Well, here's the thing, too. I think there's a thought process with a lot of people, and myself included, which is what else hasn't gone up, right? What else is left that deserves to be more valuable than it is? Kind of the way modern was so hot that people go, hey, hold on a second. That doesn't make sense when vintage is this low and these players are Hall of Famers and all-time greats. Well, if Garbage Pail Kids go up, well, what about Avengers? Well, if Avengers go up, what about Pokemon? Well, if Pokemon goes up, what about The Simpsons or something else? Like, I love those old Simpsons cards, even though they're mass-produced, and I only have like a couple packs of them, but I've seen those go up, right? So I think it starts with one thing, and then the next question is, well, if this, then what does that mean for that? And then you just go to the next thing and the next thing. So, you know, if The Rock is super high, well, what about Triple H, or what about these other wrestlers, or Hulk Hogan? So that's what's exciting, though, is that it just happens. But then I think just like Marvels and anything else, it's a wave, and then you see it build and build and build and then cool off very quickly. So it's like, all right, Marvel is what everyone's talking about. Might as well sell off now, because it's never going to last, right? It just doesn't last forever. And I think it's like a month to 2 months max where I see cards or trends until people have saturated it and they want to move on to something else.
Yeah, definitely. And that's so true. I mean, because even like me and Nate were talking earlier today, like even from month to month, like at the sports card shows we went to, it was almost like a different theme of each show with, you know, what the guys are chasing, and even really what the vendors are putting out, or, you know, what kind of inventory they're pushing or whatnot. So it
makes sense. Yeah. Well, that's probably why when I went to the shows, I'm looking for Prism and Prism Silvers and Optic Hollows of football, which is off season, which makes sense because they're probably buying the same thing as what I'm looking for versus selling. Because if they were selling, then they would be buying. I would be looking at cards that are at the bottom. So I think it makes sense that, you know, I'll do one of these shows as a vendor in July or August when I want to liquidate all these football cards. But if I'm looking to buy that stuff now, it's no surprise that I'm seeing vintage football, vintage basketball, and then modern basketball without much of the cards I'm really interested in. So it's like, if it's October, you sell pumpkins and Halloween costumes. If it's July, you sell fireworks and hot dogs. And I feel like that's how it kind of is. And maybe that's why it's tougher to be an investor looking for the rock bottom deals at card shows if they have the same mentality, knowing that, hey, that's not the time I want to sell that because the prices are really low.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because like every market is different. You know what I mean? Like you said, like you'll see highs and then it'll cool off. They just the market settling, finding that new average price and everything, and the time to sell is when it's at its hottest, whenever everyone's talking about it, everyone's interested, because like you said, it cools and then they're off to the next thing. So like when we were at our last show that was at the mall, our local mall or whatever, like that's mainly all we saw was vintage, because vintage was so up in price, and we're looking for the modern, trying to find maybe a couple deals on maybe some guys that that were rookies last year that might be taking that next step and getting those great prices again. And it was like they hid them away because they knew that they were going to pop back up. They want to save that for, when it comes back. So it's interesting when you go to these shows and do some of these things, and you see how the market kind of twists and turns. You went to a show today. Did you see anything kind of interesting or any interesting twists or anything?
Well, I did. Yeah, I went to 2 shows. So there was actually, what I heard was 3 shows here in Southern California, which is awesome. Wow. And it's cool because if you can go to a local show, taxes, scams, and fees are all avoided. And then plus you have the enjoyment of meeting face to face. I think that the difficult thing, like you mentioned, is that if your goal is to buy low, sell high, well, that is their goal as well. So it's hard for them to sell the stuff that is really low unless they just believe that they don't believe that player is going to do good, or that team, or whatever else. So there's 3 shows. 2 of them I went to. One was indoor at the Westminster show, which I did an episode on a couple weeks ago. And then Sasha T and Coleman were there, and they did an episode. I'm sure they'll have one coming up next week on it as well. Not nearly as busy. The first one I went to 2 weeks ago, there was a line wrapped around the door. It was incredibly busy at 10 o'clock in the morning. This time I walked up and there was no one there. People were just setting up at 9:30, and it never got that busy in the 3 hours I was there. But I think that's because there was another show going on about 12 miles away, which was set up outdoor. And I thought it was cool that it was outdoor, because here in Southern California, it's 75 degrees and sunny. It's really nice. But you also have a lot of sun hitting graded cards and autos and stuff you wouldn't want. There was nothing, it was more of the same, like really nice cards. Some that are just raw only, some that are graded, and then some that are just super high end, where it's LeBron rookies and KD rookies and Kobe autos, pristine BGS 10s and stuff like that. So there's beautiful cards, but again, I think right now that's beyond my realm. I started with the low end stuff, super low end, $5 stuff a year ago, and now I'm up to $200 to $1,000 cards, where I'm very comfortable with, but I'm looking for that very liquid stuff. The prisms, the chromes, the optic hollows, etc. And a lot of these cards were just wonderful PC cards, or those $30,000 investments that could go up more. But if KD or someone breaks an ankle or tears an ACL, it could drop for the next 6 months to a year, where that's out of my realm of investing, where I want to be more conservative than that. But some of the best cards out there in the hobby are at these shows, especially in these bigger markets. So if you can go to them, it's at least great window shopping at the least.
Definitely. Do you have any plans for where you want your investments to get to? Like, do you want to be up on like a level where Sasha is, making plays for like, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 cards? Or do you kind of like where you're at right now, kind of, maybe going a little bit wider, more so than like deep with stuff?
For me, starting at $5 cards a year ago, I'm very happy at my progress. But with the hobby going in this direction, I think it'd be super cool to have the same type of discussions with an extra 0 or 2 at the end, because if you have a strategy that works and you're learning every day and you're just saying like, okay, I learned this lesson on a $10 card, and then I learned that lesson on a $100 card, and I learned that lesson on a $1,000 card, and you're pretty damn good. You're honed in on your strategy. Might as well scale up, because I was talking to Sasha today. He hopped on a plane to go, and I forgot if it was Seattle or Portland. It's one of the two. For
I think it was Portland.
Was it Portland? Okay, for a card, a $40,000 Kevin Durant card. I'm like, dude, you flew out. That is a business deal. That is the same thing as like having a job and flying out to close a deal on a sale. Like, you're a salesman of a pharmaceutical, drug or a medical equipment or something, and you just closed a deal that could net you $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, who knows? And now your bills could be paid for the next 6 months or the year. And right now it's very scary to me, because that's like super high end compared to where I am now, but also compared to where I was a year ago, where I'm like, $5, can I, what's the odds that I can't resell for $5? Could this go down to $2? So it might be another year or so. It could be longer. I just want to make sure that I have the principles in place and I have the strategy honed in to scale up at a good level, so that I'm not overextending myself or getting false confidence because I'm getting bailed out by so much money entering the market that people that are new coming in are buying up some poor investments of mine. But if this was a very flat growth, if it was like 2% growth per year, I would have been done. But I don't want to get that sense of false confidence that I'm a great investor, when in reality, it's just because someone else is new and doesn't know what they're doing, and they're buying it from me at too high of a premium. So, I'm in it for the long haul. I love growing the community and the station. So any opportunity that comes is great, as long as I feel good that I'm not over leveraging myself and that I have other investments going and that I'm getting smarter all the time. If it's a $10,000 card in 5 months or a year's time, I'm totally good with that. But I don't want to be missing out or having that FOMO that I should be doing this at a higher level than I currently am, because I'd rather be a bit conservative there.
I think you have a great point. Like, as you grow or as you jump into, this market, jump in easy, put in some money that if you lost it today, you're not going to literally lose everything. You know what I mean? You don't want to jump in and buy, say, a LeBron Chrome unless it's like dirt cheap or something like that. You know what I mean? Jump in, grab some cards, some cheaper ones or whatever, some graded stuff, preferably, would be your best bet, unless you want to, grade with PSA or submit with somebody. But, as you grow, your collection, your investments, your bankroll, you're able to make different pickups or take a little more risk, because now you're playing with your profits versus, now that loan or whatever that you might have had or whatever, now you put all that money in, now you're, it's a total loss. So that's a great point, is just basically grow at your own pace of what you can handle, and don't overdo it, because if you do, that's where you find yourself in big trouble. Stock market, it could happen anywhere. You know what I mean? You see stock one day be, say $100 a share, and next it's a penny stock. It happens. It could be the same thing with cards, probably not as bad, but you'll definitely see some drops, as we've seen with modern recently and with other different markets.
Yeah, you make a great point too, where there's always that person that pays the most for the card before it goes down, with every swing, the Marvel card, the vintage, whatever it is. And I think for me, it's like, there's a lot of FOMO, because it is so much fun to get in and buy something cool and assume it's going to continue to go up. But it's just very dangerous, because it's very easy to buy. The whole process of a business where they have one click on Amazon, they have buy it now on eBay. It's designed to be very seamless, so that moment you have that little rush of dopamine, of excitement, you make the purchase before you even realize what's going on. And then that's where it can be very dangerous. But with NBA Top Shots, with everything going on, there's a lot of excitement, but we got to understand, all right, it's new. Everything that is new is exciting. There is money at first, because there's this gold rush opportunity, but that's temporary. And NBA Top Shot could be great in a year or 2 years or 3 years, but I don't mind waiting 2 years until getting into NBA Top Shot, until I fully understand it and believe in it, because I would rather go by that set of principles of once I learn it, once I understand it, then I'll take action versus let me just get in now because I heard someone else making money in it. And then I'll hope for the best, because that's not a principle. And even if that works out short term, long term, that's a losing strategy. That only works until that one time you do that with $50,000 and then it's gone. So I'd rather just build the patience and the principles of, all right, do I believe in it? Do I understand enough to take action? Okay, let me start small. Let me build up. Let me get smarter. Because even if it takes longer to succeed, you're going to succeed forever versus I made a lot of money very quick and then I ruined it by doing that again and it not panning out.
I agree. That's definitely a good point there. I know that you brought up NBA Top Shot. What is your overall thought of that? Is it something that's going to be, you think it's going to be a quick type of wave, or do you think it's something that could be here, kind of a digital age, kind of crypto / cards in a way?
My initial thoughts of NBA Top Shot was I don't understand this at all, and I don't think it's going to succeed because I was comparing it to cards, right? I was comparing it exactly to sports cards where I'm like, this makes no sense compared to having a sports card and opening a pack and all this. And then now looking at it as a form of currency. And also, you know, there's not really moments that I care so much with NBA Top Shot just because I haven't been watching NBA nearly as much as NFL. But then I asked myself, well, what if there was a Tom Brady Super Bowl touchdown NFL Top Shot? Would I want that? And the answer is yeah, actually I would. If there was an NFL version of it. So if there's an NFL version that I would like, then I'm starting to understand that other people would want a game-winning 3 by Luka or someone else, if that's their team, if that's their guy, etc. So I'm starting to open my mind to it, but it's still too early for me to take action because, again, just like with cards, I don't want to take action when everyone's buying into something. I want to wait for it to cool off, then reevaluate, wait for the pendulum to swing to something else, and then really look in and say, all right, well, I believe in this long term. The novelty, the honeymoon phase is over. Now let me look at what the strategy is and if it makes sense, and then I'll go in and buy moments or packs or whatever when there's not so much buzz around it. But I'm opening up more to NBA Top Shot just based on looking at it differently versus just another collectible, right? I don't want to collect moments. And I also know that I'm 34 and I don't want to collect moments, but just because that's me doesn't mean that a 17-year-old looks at it the same way, because a 17-year-old might see it as, no, this is normal. This is cool. Like, why would I want a physical card? That sounds annoying. That sounds like a pain in the ass to haul around or keep safe. I could just have everything here because they grew up with everything being digital. So maybe the way I look at a physical card is the exact same way they would look at a moment. And I'm starting to understand that now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Definitely a good point.
What about you guys? Are you Top Shot fans or what?
Personally, like for me, I'm not, just because of the same thing you said. Like I like to have a physical card, you know what I mean? And like I'm just not that into the moments and stuff. But looking at it from an outside perspective as like a digital currency, you know, that is kind of like a nice way of looking at almost like a cryptocurrency type thing. But for me, it's like I'm afraid to put too much money in because I don't want to be like putting out money and it be like the next fidget spinner. You know what I mean? Where it's like hot for, 6 months and then it's like you can't even sell the thing on clearance type thing. So like, I'm not saying that that's going to be the case. It's worrisome to me because it's a new technology and everything like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of like investing in cannabis, right? Cannabis blew up and it's a great industry, but that doesn't mean every cannabis company or every grower or whatever is doing well. So to me, it's like there's legitimacy in it, and because it is NBA, I feel better about it. But that doesn't mean that where it's at now is a legitimate representation of where it will be in 6 months or a year. Just like Pokemon cards or Marvel or anything else, I'll wait. I'll just wait for it to cool off. Once it cools off, even HGA, right, the grading service, the prices are selling quite high now. Is that a representation of where it will be in 6 months or a year's time? I don't know. But after a year, you've earned enough time for me to, like, the sample size will be big enough for me to say, okay, it's been a year. So all the other things that could have been going on, false sales or people just buying because it's new and they wanted that slab just for the moment and they thought they could turn it over again for a big profit, all that stuff will have passed. And then I could say, all right, there's some actual sales, they've been smooth, and now let me explore it myself. But it's one of those things. And maybe it's just being in our 30s, and maybe guys that are older, we have a bit more patience, and we can wait for the pie to cool before we try and dig in and burn our mouths. But that's the way I see it.
Yeah, I'm definitely kind of the same way with Top Shot and with HGA. You know what I mean? I really like what HGA is doing. I think it's a cool type of thing that they're doing with the slabs, making it more personalized, like with your option of looks and especially with some of the different short prints. I really like, if say the card's like a gold, you can go with the gold and stuff like that. It really will make the card pop. I really like that idea, but I'm kind of like you. I want to see where it is, like, for example, when the hype's over, how bad did the market fall? Did it fall on its face? Did it kind of just go down to where like SGC is? Is it like BGS? I need to see more data before I would put, $35 or whatever into a card and send it in. Because, with PSA, you're always going to get max value,
Yeah, for now, but I'm pretty sure PSA will be the one that I have the most faith in, even in 6 months or a year. And another thought process I had was, if PSA has millions of cards backlogged, which I've heard 1 million for sure, but I've also heard 10 million, which I'm like, that would be absurd. But if that's the case, then there's going to be a lot of PSA cards coming back, which will make it even more of a currency card, right? The one that most people are going to grade through will be the easiest one to understand the value of, versus, okay, well, we have 5% of this card through this company, 3% through this, 8% through this. But if you have 85% at PSA, it's very easy to understand the values. And I think that's where there's a lot of it's easy with cards that are just base cards, rookie cards, that kind of stuff, where we want to understand what they're actually worth. But also PSA could say, you know what, well, we're going to introduce a new slab technology where we're going to match it. If it's this card, it's going to be this color. If it's this card, it's going to be this color. Then all of a sudden, they could just wipe out HGA because they can just do the same thing. I don't think they need to. I don't think it'll get to the point where they need to do subgrades or any of that, because they have such a stranglehold. But they could easily do that if they wanted.
I agree. That's what makes like kind of their position in the market such. They can make a change. I mean, if you actually think about it, if they wanted to, they could do that with what HGA is doing right now and kind of make a separate business to do what they're doing now, like just re-slabbing cards that are already slabbed with the new look and the customization. And now you have a secondary business,
It's actually a great point, because what if they say, this is really taking off. They have some great advice, and we're going to take every 9 and every 10 and just do the same thing, or whatever grade. The subgrades might be more work because now it's a different thing, but maybe they authorize a separate company to re-slab these cards, carefully take them out, and then now this will be your new slab, and it looks better, and it's $30 charge, but maybe that'll sell for a lot more because it just looks a lot better. Because one of the biggest complaints is that red label doesn't look very good on a lot of cards. So I always thought to myself, well, what if they just put that little red label on the back side and kept the front side a silver, something neutral, where if you have a teal card or a purple or yellow, it's not going to get thrown off by this red trim. But if they wanted to do that, they could. Maybe they're looking into it. Who knows?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, they could easily do that. I know some people, they look at the PSA label like it's nostalgia. It's like, when you look at that card, you're like, you know what? That's PSA. That's the king. That's what's going to be the best value long term for a hold or for whatever. So I can understand it from both sides. You know what I mean? From a person that maybe invested with or had PSA cards or collected cards since PSA opened its doors. Maybe they're like, no, I want things to stay the same. So maybe giving options or different opportunities like that could be pretty cool to offer, because depending on who you're buying or who you're collecting or who you're PCing, having that extra design angle would be really awesome to add to some of those slabs, and then also you get the same value because it's still a PSA slab.
Definitely.
Well, I wonder, after, let's say, in a year and a half or 2 years, where a lot of the 80s, 90s, 2000s stuff is graded already. If they could now roll out with that, because they don't need to have so many employees, because now all the junk wax stuff has already been processed. All the leftovers, everything in someone's attic has already been processed. And now they have this huge facility. They have all these employees, but you don't have nearly as many cards, because now the majority of cards being submitted are 2020, 2021, etc. Maybe they say, all right, well, one of the other complaints we have is subgrades and cooler looking slabs. Now, all right, we have a different service. If you have these cards, now you can have them re-slabbed and it's going to look better. But they have the power right now. They have the power because we trust them. Their perceived value is the highest, and I think it would take a lot for that to change. I think, I don't even know if they could slip into second place at this point. I think it's more of a race to second, with perhaps BGS being there and then SGC and the others just trying to grab the third place slot. But even if the prices are higher and the turnaround times are a lot longer, when you're safer, it's hard not to go with them.
Definitely.
I agree 100%. I know some people, they like getting cards back a little bit quicker. And, for example, say if I have my Kobe right now, that Flair Metal Cyber Tech with PSA right now. If I got that back at 9, they don't give you any explanation like, okay, well, this, it was banged up on the corners or anything like that. So, sometimes those subgrades kind of reels you in. Okay, now I understand how they grade, how hard they grade, maybe for a ding, a corner, or so on and so forth, and kind of give you an idea moving forward, like when you're out prospecting cards or buying raw cards, gives you a better idea too.
You know what I thought of? I was like, PSA is a huge company, SGC and all these other companies. Why don't they have YouTube videos saying, hey guys, this is exactly what to look for. This is how we grade it. And I would love for them to have examples of each card, as in, this is the 1995 Upper Deck set. This set is very tough to grade because the packs got smushed, or there's a printing line here. So when you're looking at your own cards, look out for this. If it has this printing line, it's automatically going to get a 9. If this corner here, how cool would it be for the grading companies to actually want us to submit the cards that we believe in will get higher grades, and to give advice like, hey, make sure to clean off your cards, and this is how to do it. I don't know if they have videos out there going step by step versus just pack it up, put it in a top loader, but actually encourage us to do things so that they receive higher grades, because I understand that if they put that out there, they might get less submissions because people will know what to look for. But I think the overall feeling towards that company will be a lot higher. I would rather go with the company that is looking for me to succeed with the grades versus just, dude, pack it up this way, enter it in the site, and then that's it. And then rely on us to do that, because, when I get back a submission and I got a PSA 5 or a 7 or a 6 or something, I'm going to be upset and I'll want an explanation. But if they said, hey, here's the exact card on our website, we did a whole video on this set and what we look for and what you should look for when going over it, I would feel a lot better about that company. I'd be like, hey, they're on my side versus they're just looking for the most amount of money.
That's a great point, because it would also limit what is being sent in as well. If we're seeing the same card with Pittsburgh just did a video with the cards with a defect, and if a card has a defect and it's barely visible, it's very hard to see, or whatever the case is, with a certain print line or something with a certain card or whatever, you won't know unless someone tells you, or PSA, or like how BGS or the other ones have subgrades and PSA doesn't. So I think that would be a great thing that they can do moving forward if they put out the effort to going out with that as well.
I think just in terms of likability, like SGC, if you're the underdog especially, why not do that yourself? Say, hey guys, we appreciate all your support. Here are some of the common cards you send to us. We want to make sure you guys get the best grades possible and are not disappointed. So with the Zion Williamson 2019 Prism card, this is what we look for. This is how centering works on this card. How much better would you feel about a company that is rooting you on, that is giving you all the tips, so that if it is a borderline 7 or 8 or 9, you could at least be like, okay, don't send that one. We know that we might lose out short term on that extra profit, but we know that we won't get overwhelmed, we won't get backlogged, and you have the best chance of getting 9s and 10s back. What are the odds of you resubmitting to us, knowing that we're kind of helping you along the way? And I think a lot of those PSA group submitters and all that, they will actually have a service where they'll look over your cards and tell you which ones are worth it or not. But why can't PSA help out with that and say, oh, just go to our website, 1999 Skybox, whatever, look at the set. Here are the 3 things or 4 things to look out for from that specific set. Here's a PSA 7, 8, 9, 10, and look at each one. Also make sure to check that bottom right corner, because in a lot of the cards, the bottom right corner got dinged because of whatever. Like, yeah, I think it shouldn't have to be Cardboard Connection or another person putting that out there. It should be something where they would want to put that out there and help us. Like, I would feel very good about them just wanting to help the hobby by making sure that the cards that should be graded, because they're going to grade high, are graded, and the ones that are going to come back 6s, 7s, 8s are not, or at least you know about it ahead of time.
Yeah, not only that, it's another way to monetize too. You know what I mean? Like, because, for example, like, you could just record a guy that's just doing his job, going through grading the stuff and being like, yeah, you see this flaw right here, that because of this type of thing, this is going to knock this type of card down. And I think because they would be PSA, SGC, like one of the bigger grading companies, I think that a lot of people would probably take their, you know, what they say about the cards above, like, even some other people on, you know, on YouTube. I think that they would automatically grow fast because of that, because everybody would want it like right from the lion's mouth.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
Paul has a question. He says, when it comes to local buying, selling, and trading, do you think your location affects the value? I see other videos, people are buying the same card I see for 2 times or more than in my area.
That's a good question. It's weird, because the only way I see buying and selling done fairly is off of eBay, because eBay represents the marketplace. So even at these local shows, I ask a price for a card, and sometimes, and I don't know if it's just negotiation where they charge higher, they say a number higher off of higher than they would take, but I don't know how it would work where all the data is so easily accessible now. Unless it's a small raw card, if it's a graded card, it is just so easy to look up on your phone or on your computer with a card ladder or market movers or whatever, where how do you get away with charging more than market value? I can only see it being done where people don't know how much to charge because they don't look up eBay sales and charge less. And then that's a buyer or that's a seller that you want to go back to. But I don't think it should matter. The only thing that makes sense to me is if you're out of the country and then you're dealing with customs or some other fees. But if you're local, because there's no taxes, because there's, or, you know, taxes are under the table or whatever, and because there are no fees involved or risks for scams, I would just imagine it should be about the same. I don't know. Like, if you told me that it was a lot cheaper in Pittsburgh to buy sports cards, I'm like, all right, then I'm flying to Pittsburgh. I'm flying to Pittsburgh with 20 grand, and I'm going to buy all these cards at 30% less than what I can get here in LA. But that should not be the case. But if it is, please let me know.
I'll just let the cat out of the bag. We're all going to the Gate City right after this live.
Yeah.
Well, have you guys noticed that? Have you guys noticed any disparity between card prices locally, or have you noticed that a lot of the card sales you're seeing on YouTube or wherever else are higher than what you're seeing in your area?
The only difference I've ever seen, really, for the most part, is like certain vendors sometimes go by Beckett prices. Like the guy I dealt with at my local card show, he went solely based on Beckett pricing, and I think I definitely got the best end of the deal. I traded a bunch of, I mean, it was Jordan stuff, but it wasn't like the high end stuff. It was like stuff that it was PSA 9s and stuff that were like $25 I was picking up here and there, just all the way through my, investing, collecting and stuff like that. And he was gung-ho about it. It was right when vintage really started taking off. So the cards went up, but they didn't go up, to $1,000 cards or anything like that. They probably went to from 25 to 50, maybe 75 for something like that. The only card that I would say probably went up a lot was the Topps Finest Michael Jordan card that I had. It was like a refractor or something like that. Oh no, sorry, it wasn't a refractor, but it was a base. It was a low print run. It doubled in price to 250, but I got 2 James Harden rookies and that Kobe off him, and they're all at PSA right now, waiting to. 2 of the cards are express, and the one got sent bulk. I decided to send that bulk, but yeah, I couldn't believe it. He was the easiest guy I ever dealt with. And the craziest part, the card that I'm so pumped to have out of that Kobe, it was mostly like he had 3 cards left he wanted off me, and I had seen 1 card, and I was like, how about this for these 3? And those were like the worst 3 cards out of the deal. So I mean, that's the only time I've ever seen like someone going maybe a little off the track versus eBay prices and stuff like that.
So that's interesting because I automatically think, for one, I didn't even know Beckett had prices anymore. I thought that was more obsolete just because eBay and ComC and all this other stuff was there. So that's interesting because there was one card that you guys may have seen, the 2012-2013 Kobe Bryant Crusade card, where it's the white angel wing. So I saw one of those at the card show today raw. And I asked the guy how much it was because I would have loved to have bought it for $20 or $50 or something. And he said $250. I'm like, all right. So he knows how much those cards have gone up to. But that makes me think, would a Beckett guide understand how much a random Kobe Bryant base card from 14 years into his career, or something like that would be worth, or 18 years into his, wait, was it 98, 08? Yeah, like 14 years or whatever into his career. Would Beckett guide say that's an $8 card or a $10 card, or would it realize that they realize it had spiked up to $200 or so? And so then if you can go to someone that is basing their prices off of Beckett, it could easily be outdated or way off, because I don't know how Beckett finds their prices if it's not through eBay and other sales that are documented. I don't know what their process was before the internet took off, and I don't know what it is now. So if you guys know, please share, because maybe if someone is 60 years old, 70, 80, and they've been doing it the same way before eBay and everything else, then that could be a good opportunity to find some deals right there.
Definitely. Paul said, just an example, my last show, I bought 4 for gradable Shaq rookies for $100. I watched another YouTuber get excited to pay $80 just for 1 card that he got in Dallas. So, I mean, unless, it was like a short print or something, I don't know. I doubt it was the gold. Those things, those are so high dollar. Unless he thought it was going to 10 because of how the market's going. I mean, that would be the only way I would get excited for, paying $80 for 1 raw card or whatever like that. But yeah, I could see.
I wonder if it's less about location and more about the generation of the seller. I wonder if it's a seller that has a bunch of cards from 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and is not keeping up with the current prices, because the current prices are moving so quickly. So they don't have the strategy or the tool to look up what it is worth today. And if that is the seller that is okay selling at a price that's 3 times what they paid, but still a third of what it's currently worth. But that should be separate from location. So I just wonder if that's more of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
MCS says, what is a reliable source for sports card shows? Don't say Facebook or I'm out. Honestly, for me, I just search online. You know what I mean? I'll Google. I'll try and get into I can't remember what the site is. Paul sent it to me. I think I bookmarked it, but you just have to kind of fall in where people place their for their state, their shows and stuff like that.
I will say there's one guy on Instagram who started an account, The Show Locator. So it's at The Show Locator. His name is Donald, and if there's a flyer from some city that is having a show, he'll just post it there. So I found the ones from LA on it, but I'm also seeing Milwaukee and Dallas and Pinellas Park in Florida and all that. So I don't want it to be like 50 different accounts to look at. He's one that is putting out everything from across the country, and I think maybe even Canada as well. So you could always check it out there. And if you have a show that you want to submit, just tell others in your city about the show locator, and have them submit a flyer, and he'll just post it right then and there. And it's a good way for anyone on Instagram to find out about local shows.
That's
awesome.
That's
I
an
never
awesome.
even thought of that.
Yeah, because I'm sure where we're at, there's other ones that are just a little bit farther than maybe we look or whatever. You know, I know there's a bunch of shows in Philly, which is a nice little drive across the state, but you know, if it's a big enough show, I'll definitely make the trip or whatever if I knew about
Not
it.
to mention they have cheesesteak.
Right?
So, kind of a win-win.
Well, you know what? There was one sandwich I had. There was a show called Man versus Food. You guys remember that show? Have you heard of it? Okay.
Yeah.
So there's Man versus Food. That guy was hilarious, Adam Richmond. And he did another show called Best Sandwich in America. And there was a sandwich. It was like a pork and broccoli rabe sandwich at Reading Terminal in Philadelphia that actually won the best sandwich in America. And so I was like, all right, I don't really eat pork anymore, and I can't really deal with the grease the way I used to. But if I go to Philly, I got to try it. And I remember going to Philadelphia and going to Reading Terminal and saying, I want this sandwich, the one that won the award. And it was phenomenal. And the bread was on point, the cheese, the broccoli rabe, and I did not expect the sandwich to exist, but it was phenomenal. So if you're in Philly, next time you go, Reading Terminal and the broccoli rabe sandwich from Best Sandwich in America, Man versus Food. You got to try it.
Yeah, I definitely will next time I'm out there.
That's good. It seems like a challenge I need to take. That's for sure.
Yeah, challenge accepted.
Yeah, dude. I mean, if it wins best anything in America and it has an actual bracket system, if you're in the city, you got to try it. So it was one of those things where I'm like, I felt like hell the next day. I was like, I felt horrible, but it was totally worth it.
Paul dropped that link for the one I was trying to think of. Thanks, Paul. I really appreciate that. That's another great place. It shows all different states. So this way, if you're only in Pennsylvania or like us, you could see a little bit farther out and possibly go to West Virginia or so on and so forth. So that's a really good tip. So there's two really good pieces of information right there to find shows that maybe you couldn't find.
And I would really expect the shows to get bigger and bigger by summer. I really think I think some people are not going to shows out of fear of COVID, and maybe they're more susceptible, or they have someone near them that they can't risk it. And then other people, they just don't know about it, or it'll be their first show. But I really think shows are going to get bigger and bigger because people want it. People really want to do business locally, save money, get cards instantly. And it's just a cool dynamic. Even if you don't want to spend a dime and you just want to window shop, it is fun just to window shop. So I think that's the big thing by summer. I think shows are just going to have, like for example, the shows here, there wasn't really a vendor selling any food or water. And I'm starting to think, all right, well, in 3 months' time, 6 months' time, you make this big enough and you're going to have a food truck. You're going to have two food trucks. You're going to have a booth over here. You're going to have like a PSA rep. You're going to have whatever else. As long as the momentum continues, you have 100 people and then 200 and then 500. Then all of a sudden you get some real other types of businesses and support going alongside it. So I'm excited about that because I think it's fun. I think it's like a blast. It's the stuff that when we were kids, we wanted to do. We wanted to trade and just talk about cards, even if we weren't buying or selling.
Yeah, I think that's going to be something for sure to watch out for this summer, like you said, because the market being the way it is, and I love trading, I love interacting, and going to a show and finding a non-vendor to trade with that is, say, a Zion collector or anything, and I happen to have one card he doesn't have. I'm trading that card to someone that's going to cherish it, and I'm also going to get a good trade back for maybe, or even sell it to him for a great value because, like you said, you don't have to pay, any of the taxes and stuff like that, where, it just becomes a lot more out of pocket than that person would hope to spend, or maybe they can afford that card because of, the taxes and stuff like that.
Yeah, and also it's very transactional when you're on CompC or eBay or the others, and it should be, right? It's a very basic transaction. But when I receive cards from sellers on Beckett Marketplace or on eBay, and they send me an extra base card of Warren Sapp or someone that's worth 30 cents, but it's one of my favorite players, I'm like, wow, this is way more than a transactional business. This is really something where if you can send an extra card or you can do something a bit more special, it really lights up the other person. So the idea of having that interaction where the other person will appreciate that card and you had that great exchange, it makes it so much more special than just this card for this amount of money and move on, which most businesses are. So, I mean, I noticed that here at the card shows, people saying hi to me. One guy asked for a selfie and I'm like, dude, you asked for a selfie? That's the most flattering thing I've heard all year, So, but it's cool because then we could just talk for 20 minutes about whatever that's going on. And that's someone I'd rather do business with. Even if I don't get the most amount of profit, I'm getting a lot of enjoyment and value from doing business with someone that I like.
Definitely.
So, and that's the potential of doing these local shows.
Mike asked, will you go to a national show in Chicago? I know
that is for sure. That is definitely the plan. You guys?
That's the plan. We're looking to do that. I think they're already sold out for vendors and everything right now. They are.
Unfortunately, I wanted to get a table. That would have been awesome. But yeah, I think that we'd like to try to go.
But if they're sold out already for vendors, I think that's just a sign of how many tickets can they sell and how big can this be? And do they need another one or do they need to expand this? Because I don't know anyone that is not planning on going to the national that realistically can do it, just because it's once per year. But yet the last one was 2019, and what they expected or what the numbers were, whatever it was in 2019 versus 2021, in 2 years of growth, I mean, it's probably going to be 5 times bigger than what it was just 2 years ago, because I never would have considered going until getting into cards and then learning about how big it is and all that. But I mean, that's the kind of event where I go, there could be VIP parties and there could be big time athletes attending, and Gary Vee could have a whole setup versus just a little booth. It could be so much bigger. And if it's that much bigger, then maybe twice a year is more reasonable. And then maybe bigger regional shows where it's one on the West Coast, one in the Northeast, one in the South, whatever, stuff like that. So I don't know. I get excited about that just because I see the potential here at the local shows in LA.
You got me excited, man. You got me really excited just to, try and just go to Chicago. I mean, yeah, it sounds like walking into like a toy store when you're a kid. You know what I mean? That's the feeling I have when I go to these these shows and stuff. And it's just the opportunity to find cards you might never ever see again. You could see one-on-ones of your favorite player. You could find a whole mess of Michael Jordan rookies that maybe you never actually laid eyes on other than maybe Instagram or something like that. So I just think it's just so cool. And I'm happy the hobby is where it's at right now, and hopefully it continues to grow, and the Vegas Dave crash is just talk like I think it is, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's always growth that's unsustainable, and I think the way it's gone year over year, that's not sustainable, because we've seen cards that were $100 that are now safely going for $1,000, and we're like, okay, well, that's not going to 10x again and again and again. That's going to settle off. But as long as the floor, and I had a great conversation with someone today, as long as the floor of the hobby, if it's somewhere where it's at today, even in a couple years, I think that's tremendous. If the hobby is, everyone knows about it, people have gotten in, they've gotten out, people have made money, they've lost money, they've gotten over it, they've moved to something else. If the hobby is somewhere around where it's at today in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, I think that's phenomenal. I just think it's great, because there's just so many ways to connect with our parents, our kids, our friends. Like, I'm talking more to my best friend from childhood now than over the last 10 years, because I got him into football cards and now he's obsessed with football cards. But we were just talking about life and, oh, how's your wife and how are your kids and how's your job and whatever. And we would talk once every, I don't know, month or so, just like, hey, how's it going? Oh, cool. Yeah. How about the Bucks? Oh, they're doing good. Yeah. But now it's, oh man, you picked up that card, and dude, what do you think about this? And blah, 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 blah. And there's so much more to bond over with that same level or that same type of childlike spirit, versus we're bonding over adult stuff, which is not nearly as fun when, you want to tap into that fun you had when you were a kid. So I see so many of this with parents saying that I'm bonding with my kid, my independent teenager who we had nothing in common with, but now we're both bonding over basketball cards. That's cool. A father and daughter over WNBA cards. You know, when I see that in the comment section, I go, all right, this is way beyond just money or just escapism. This is real connection between all sorts of people over this one thing.
Absolutely.
That's one thing that I'm definitely hoping that one of my kids get into it, because my oldest is 8. He kind of, you know, sees what I'm doing. He's not really interested. He's more interested into like his games and stuff. But my youngest, he's like a clone of me in a way. Hopefully all good. And, you know, I hope that he, you know, starts jumping into the cards with me and, you know, and stuff like that. So like you said, it's awesome just to be able to connect with, you know, your kids if you have them and or friends and stuff like that, because now it's so much more enjoyable because now you're doing it together. It's kind of like with me in Pittsburgh, you know what I mean? We met off YouTube, and now we have an awesome friendship. We do collabs, we hang out all the time, and you know, it's just awesome, man. And hobby and YouTube kind of, you know, helps cement that together for them. Well, it has a good point of it, you know.
It's so true. And I think the cool thing is that when you go to one of these card shows, it doesn't matter if you are just getting started and if you have $10, a $10 budget, or you have a $10,000 budget, you could still just talk for 30 minutes straight about whatever card or whatever player or whatever idea you have. And it's just just as special from one person to another. It's not like there's any niches or any little cliques like that. And I mean, I don't know. I think also because I wasn't very close to my dad. And I always think to myself, man, if my dad was into basketball cards in the 90s the way I was, I wonder how much better our relationship would have been. But I was into basketball and football, and he was into IndyCar and tennis, and cards were just completely separate. But when I see it as such a great bridge generationally, and then with siblings and with friends, I'm like, man, because you don't have to love investing. Someone could love the investing side. Someone else could love the gambling side. Someone else could just be like enjoying the collecting every parallel of a card. Someone else could just be thinking a card looks cool and wants to put in their room or whatever else. But there's so many different angles that I feel like there's enough there to really bring people together, regardless of where you really lie in terms of what interests you the most. So
I agree. I definitely agree.
Yeah, MSC makes a good point. The stories you hear from dealers is unsurpassable. It really is. Like, there's this one guy that goes to our local mall shows that has the biggest collection of T206s in all of Pennsylvania. So, like, every single time you go over to his table, you like literally get a history lesson of baseball cards. It's super cool.
Yeah, and I think that's the cool thing about going to one of these shows is that you're just in awe of what's really out there. And I was kind of today at the memorabilia section where I'm like, man, there's some really cool stuff. Boxing gloves signed by Mayweather and Pacquiao, and I'm sure some older boxers as well, Tyson and whatnot. But you go to one of these shows, I'm sure it's just going to be like walking into the best candy store, like walking into Willy Wonka's factory. Like, screw a candy store. It's like being a kid walking into Willy Wonka's factory, that kind of type of magical environment. So, you know, I'm definitely looking forward to it. But I just feel like that's just the beginning.
Definitely.
So we're gonna start winding down. If anyone has any questions for Brad, just type them in the chat before we get out of here. Definitely don't want to take up too much more of his time. I know he's a busy guy, and I definitely appreciate him coming and hanging out with us today.
Yeah, it's been
Well, I was going to say, I appreciate you guys having me on, but also I'm not as much busy as I have a very small bladder. So, I mean, with this giant smoothie almost processing through me, I really have got to, you know, really be strategic with that. But I did see one question about what I collect or what I invest in the most. I forgot who asked it, but I think it was somewhere up there. And right now, I mean, I like modern because I love the strategy of what's going on with sports. I'd love to love basketball more, but I'm, you know, I think it was more of a realization where I grew up in Tampa, which doesn't have a basketball team. I was an Orlando Magic fan as a kid, but I've been disappointed so many times by Orlando that it's hard to enjoy basketball when your team isn't even in your city and they're just not really relevant. So that's tough. And then football, it's hard not to be a Tampa Bay Buccaneer fan when you've been a fan of them since you were a kid, and the greatest player of all time comes over with the goofiest, most outrageous tight end of all time and win a Super Bowl in the first year of it. And so for me, I'm like, this is probably never going to happen again to Tampa sports. I'm just going to soak up all NFL, all football as much as I can. I'm watching the Super Bowl highlights more than watching actual live basketball or other games because I just want to relive it. So football for one is the biggest, and I'm looking for a lot of the off-season purchases so I can sell off before the next year. Once the basketball season winds down and teams are eliminated, I think that's when I'll look into those players as to what I believe in will be best for the next season. And then same thing with hockey, same thing with baseball. I kind of like that whole year-long cycle of who's the biggest disappointments, what team should be the best next season, who's getting injured, who's coming back from injury, and just doing that because then I can always be active in it. And I could always be lower risk because I'm investing at someone's low point so that I could sell even before they return to the field. I think that's the coolest thing is when you can make some money before they actually play a game because there's enough of a difference between their low points and their hype before stepping on the field or on the court. I think that's a really cool way to make some money on the investment side and then roll it over into whatever you care about more.
Yeah, that's really smart.
Yeah,
See if it works.
Yeah, I just love everything about the market, the analytics, the flipping, and what am I buying next? Like I just love it all, man. And I know a lot of people out there definitely do too. And it just what makes it such a fun time right now to be collecting and investing and just just riding the wave.
Yeah. Well, I'll say there's very few things that are fun to research as much as sports and sports cards. If you're going to put in hours of research as to what fantasy players will explode next year or what Vegas has in terms of odds to win the NBA finals or anything like that, I mean, is there a research that's going to be as much fun as something to do with sports and sports cards, knowing that if you're right, you can actually make money off of it? So, to find something that you enjoy the dirty work of, I think is phenomenal.
Yeah, I definitely agree there.
All right, guys. I think we answered everyone's questions. Definitely appreciate the comeback card investor for coming and hanging out with us. His link is in the description. Please go give him a sub if you haven't already. Definitely a great guy, tons of knowledge. Very cool. Definitely appreciate him coming and hanging out with us.
I appreciate you guys having me on. It's always fun to talk about this stuff, and I'm honored to join you guys tonight.
Yeah, we're honored to have you.
Me and Pittsburgh can talk cards for hours, and I'm sure you can too, man. It's
Red's like, shut up, I gotta pee, Nate.
Oh, actually, the number 2 is creeping up on me. I didn't expect the number 2. The number 1's there, but the number 2, it was a surprise. But it's funny because I talk to cards all day today, and yet I feel rejuvenated and revitalized talking about something just. I know there's money involved and there's a seriousness of cards because it is a collectible and because people are making money, losing money, and there's a business side, but it is hard not to feel excited talking about the hobby, right? I mean, it's like there's a lot of darkness out there. There's social injustice, there's COVID, there is layoffs and all this stuff. And then finally, there's one thing that is just like a light in a dark room. And it's been this hobby or this industry, however you want to look at it.
Definitely.
All right, guys, we are out of here. Come hang out with us tomorrow. We're doing our auction 4 p.m. Eastern. We'll be on Pittsburgh's channel, and we will see you guys later. Make sure to subscribe to everyone in the description. You got Pittsburgh, Gate City Picker, and myself, and of course, the Comeback Card Investor. But we're out of here. Have a fantastic night.